Hi, it's Liz, and today what I want to show you is the other method of binding my inserts into my junk journal that I made, the cover that I made last week. And this is just going to be a very quick stitch binding technique. So to start off, I've got 5 signatures of coffee stain papers, and what I mean by signatures, it's literally a set of papers folded together to create, this is called a signature. So in this case I've got 7 sheets of my coffee stain paper folded together to create a section, and those 5 sections will make up the inside of my book. Okay, and then when I'm doing a very quick stitch binding, what I like to do is make myself a grid, something like that, which actually shows where I need to mark for my needle holes to go in the spine when I'm actually stitching the paper to the cover. And how I do that, all I need to do is measure the width of this spine, and in this case with this Amazon packaging, it's 1.5 inches in width. So I cut a strip of paper 1.5 inches wide, and then what I do, I put it on my scoreboard, and because I like to have a bit of a gap at the front and at the back of my book before I actually get my pages sewn in, I always start 1/4 inch in from the left and 1/4 inch in from the right, and I just put my sheet of paper on my scoreboard, and with a pencil I literally just mark that line 1/4 inch in from the left and 1/4 inch in from the right. So if I just mark those on this side, I've already done the holes on this one, but I just wanted to show you the lines that I draw. So I've already got my lines to the left and to the right, and because I've got 5 signatures, I know that in between that line and that line I need to add another 3 lines, because where my lines are where my signatures are going to be stitched in. So I just measure equal distance to get another 3 lines across that spine there. And because I'm using 5 inserts, it's quite easy to separate that 1.5 inches, so that I've got 1/4 inch there, 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 and 1/4 inch there. And then now what I need to do is actually decide on this line where I'm actually wanting to put my stitch holes. So we always usually find the centre space, and the easiest way to do that is literally fold that piece of paper in half and draw a line across where that fold is. So where those intersections are with my needle, I'll just pop a little hole through there, so I know that's where my stitching needs to be across those holes. So on this one, fold it in half, the line across, and I've already poked through those 5 holes because I've already got my grid on the back of that one. And then what I tend to do, because I like 5 stitches for each of my signatures, I've measured here from the centre 1.5 inches, and then from there to there 1.5 inches, and the same there, from there 1.5 inches, and from there 1.5 inches. So whenever you're doing bookbinding using this method, always start from the centre of your fold, your centre of your book, and work out rather than from the edge of here. If you do it right from the centre, you know that your stitches are going to be even. So then all I need to do is where all those lines cross at 1.5 and at 3 inches, 1.5 and 3 inches, is poke my hole through. And then just using either some foam or some cushioning, tea towel, just something soft and squishy that I can put my cover onto, because I'm going to be poking through now with, I've got a book binding awl, but a pokey tool or a thick darning needle, anything that will go through the width of this cover. I'm literally just going to poke those holes through. And because I've already measured the width of this spine on this piece of paper, it's going to fit exactly in the centre of it. So these holes will always be lined up. So whenever I do a book that's got a 1.5 inch spine, I can use this grid again and again and just keep it in my pencil case ready. And if you can see there, that's where I've put my holes ready to do the stitching. So for the pages, what I do is get the grid again. If I lay it on the top so that it's centrally on, I just draw a line where each of those stitch marks on my grid are located. So I'll have a little line of dots down the side of my pages, ready for when I open them, I can put the holes in them. And because I've used the grid, it will exactly match up to the holes that I put in the cover of my book. Okay, and then very quickly I'll just show you how I stitch them into the cover. I'm just going to do 2 just to show you. So all I've got is a thick needle, and I use embroidery thread for something like this. I quite like very thick cord, so I've used the full strands of the embroidery skein for this. So I'll get my book pages and get my cover. I'm going to go for the purple one this time. So I open it up and I want to do this top row of holes first. So I'm going to go in through the centre of my pages and then through the centre of that first row of holes. And I'm going to pull the thread through so it leaves a little bit of a tail on the inside. And I've knotted it just in case I pull it too far through and I don't want the whole thread coming back through, because I'm going to have to start again. So I've got a little tail there. Going to the outside of my book, and I'm just going to go to that one to the right. So through the book, back up and through that hole on the right. And as you see, that little tail's pulled through, so I'll just pull it back again. So what you should have is a straight line there with your thread. So I'm going back in on the inside of my book, all the way through to the outside. I'm pulling that quite taut and still leaving myself a little tail on the inside. And then what I need to do, this thread here is going to go back into that hole, so it effectively creates a full line of stitching on the outside, and then eventually a full line of stitching on the inside. Just keeping that thread really quite tight. Then what I'm going to do next is go across the centre hole to this one to the left of it. So it's going to overlap that centre hole, go to the hole on the left, going right the way through to the back of my cover, Then I'm going to go to that hole there, right the way through into the centre of my pages again, like that. Pulling that thread tight, making sure it's not caught anywhere. Then back through that hole again, like so. And then finally back through that middle, back to the centre. Now this time when I come back up through the centre, I want to make sure that my needle comes through on the other side of the thread to where my little tail is. So that's that where I overlapped. My thread is underneath this piece of thread and my needle is above it. And I just want to make sure everything's pulled tight. And I'm actually going to tie this off now in a little knot. So that's why it's important that your two threads are on either side of that middle piece. And then just with my scissors, I'm just going to trim that centre off. So I've got a nice neat row of stitching on the inside, but I've also got a nice neat row of stitching on the outside. So I'm just going to do one more just to go over it again. So again, I've just knotted the end of my thread, get my next set of signatures, go through from the centre hole, so poke that through, then come to that hole that's just underneath the signature I've just put in. Again, try and leave myself a bit of a tail. I'm moving to the hole just to the right of the centre hole, up through my pages in the centre, across to that last hole, through to the outside, and down, back through, into the centre. So this time I'm missing out the middle stitch. I'm taking my needle over to the one to the left of the middle hole, going right the way through to the back, keeping it pulled as tight as I can, but making sure I've still got a tail on the inside. Then this last hole on the right the way through to the inside of my pages, back through that gap to the outside, and then coming back up through the centre, but making sure that my needle is above that middle thread and that my other tail is at the bottom, so that I can tie that off in a knot like so. So it doesn't take very long at all to stitch your pages in. Okay, and then just another thing that I show you on this second set of signatures that I've stitched in, what I like to do sometimes is create extra pockets. So how I do that, I'll open this pages in the middle and I'll get the left hand page, and what I like to do is just fold it back on itself. So I've got the stitching down the middle, this left hand page, I've turned it over and I've just turned a little edge there, and then along here I'll actually put some glue. So I just have a bit of tacky glue just along there and just along there, and then stick that down. And what that does, it creates a little pocket for yourself. But these flaps here I also just stick down at the edges, and then what that does, that creates another little tuck spot there, so you can add extra little tags, tickets, whatever. And then in here you've got a pocket page for putting some of the little secret bits and pieces, so just let that dry. So I'll carry on stitching these, and what I tend to do is every other section of paper I'll create a secret pocket page. And it's just nice when you have got plain pages just to have somewhere that's a little pocket as well, so you can put some other bits and pieces in. Okay, so I hope that was a useful video for you of how I do some very basic stitching in. And just the final thing to say, if you didn't like the colour of your thread, all you would need to do is get one of your inks and just ink over that. Okay, see you next time, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.